The rain hit my windows so hard that night it sounded like handfuls of gravel being thrown against the glass. The wind howled through the trees outside, bending their branches until they looked like they might snap in half. Most people were probably curled up in their homes, watching television or trying to sleep through the storm. I was sitting alone in my living room, staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour earlier. At 47 years old, loneliness had become a familiar companion. Not the dramatic kind of loneliness people talk about in movies, the quiet kind, the kind that waits for you at the end of every workday, the kind that fills the empty chair across the dinner table, the kind that reminds you that the life you imagined for yourself never turned out the way you planned. 5 years earlier, my marriage had ended. My ex-wife, Sarah, and I had spent 22 years together before signing the divorce papers. 22 years, a lifetime of memories, a lifetime of dreams, a lifetime that disappeared with a few signatures and a judge's stamp. People always ask what happened when they hear about a long marriage ending. The truth is rarely dramatic. There was no scandal, no explosive betrayal, no screaming match that shattered everything overnight. Instead, it was something much sadder. We slowly became strangers. Year after year, we stopped talking, stopped listening, stopped understanding each other. The distance between us grew so gradually that neither of us noticed it until it was too late. By the time we realized what was happening, the damage felt impossible to repair. The divorce wasn't angry. It was heartbreaking. We divided our belongings, sold our family home, shared tears neither of us wanted the other to see. Then we walked away. After that, our communication became limited to brief holiday messages and occasional conversations about our daughter, Emma. Nothing more, nothing less. I hadn't seen Sarah in almost 8 months. The last time was at Emma's birthday dinner. We exchanged polite smiles, asked each other how life was going, pretended everything was fine, then went our separate ways. I assumed that was how things would remain forever. Two people connected by history, but separated by life. Then the knock came. 3 sharp knocks. I glanced toward the clock. 11:37 p.m. My first thought was that something must be wrong. Nobody visited during a storm like this, especially not this late. The knocking came again, louder, more urgent. I stood and walked toward the door. The wind rattled the walls as I reached for the handle. When I opened it, my heart nearly stopped. Sarah stood on my porch, soaked from head to toe. Rainwater dripped from her hair. Her coat was drenched. Her hands trembled from the cold. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We simply stared at each other. 5 years of separation suddenly felt like 5 seconds. "Sarah," I finally whispered. Her eyes looked exhausted, red from crying, filled with something I hadn't seen in years, vulnerability. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't know where else to go." The words hit me harder than the storm. I immediately stepped aside. "Get inside." She hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Sarah, you're freezing." She entered the house slowly. The familiar scent of rain followed her inside. I grabbed a towel from the bathroom and handed it to her. She thanked me softly. The sight of her standing in my living room felt surreal, like a memory had somehow stepped out of the past. For years, this woman had been my entire world. Now she looked like a stranger carrying pieces of someone I once knew. I made her a cup of tea. She wrapped both hands around the mug as though it were the only source of warmth left in the world. For several minutes, we sat in silence while thunder shook the sky outside. Finally, I asked the question hanging between us. "What happened?" Sarah stared into her tea. For a long time, she said nothing. Then her shoulders began to shake. Tears rolled down her cheeks and suddenly she was crying. Not quietly, not politely. The kind of crying that comes from carrying too much pain for too long. I felt helpless watching it. No matter what had happened between us, seeing her hurt still hurt me. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. "I lost my apartment." I blinked. "What?" "I lost my job 3 months ago." My stomach dropped. She continued. "I used up my savings trying to stay afloat." I sat there in stunned silence. I had no idea. None. Sarah had always been fiercely independent. She rarely asked anyone for help, especially me. "I didn't tell anyone," she admitted. "I thought I could fix everything myself." The sadness in her voice was overwhelming, but things kept getting worse. I could see how embarrassed she felt, how ashamed, how broken, and for the first time in years, I saw not my ex-wife. I saw the woman who had once carried our family through difficult times. The woman who had stood beside me during layoffs, illnesses, and financial struggles. The woman who had always been strong until life finally became too heavy. "Why didn't you call me?" I asked gently. She laughed bitterly. "After everything that happened between us? Sarah, I didn't want to be your problem." Those words shattered something inside me because she was never problem. Not then, not now, not ever. The storm outside continued raging through the night. I prepared the guest room, fresh blankets, clean sheets, a warm lamp beside the bed. When I showed her the room, she looked around quietly. Then she turned toward me, her eyes filled with tears again. "Thank you." I nodded. "Get some sleep." As I walked away, she spoke. "David." I stopped. "Yes." "I never thought you'd open the door." I looked at her for several seconds. Then I answered honestly. "I never thought you'd need to knock." Neither of us slept much that night. The past has a way of returning when you least expect it. The next morning, the storm had passed. Sunlight filtered through the windows. For the first time in years, Sarah and I sat across from each other at a breakfast table. Felt strangely familiar, like slipping into an old photograph. Awkward at first, then comforting. We talked for hours. Not about the divorce, not about blame, not about old arguments. We talked about life, about Emma, about work, about the years we spent apart. For the first time in a very long time, we actually listened to each other. Days turned into a week. A week turned into 2. Sarah found temporary work. I helped her update her resume. She helped me organize the chaos in my garage. We shared meals, laughed at old memories, watched movies during quiet evenings. Slowly, something unexpected began happening. The walls between us started coming down. One evening, while sitting on the porch watching a sunset, Sarah asked a question. "Do you ever think about us?" I stared toward the horizon. "Every day." She looked away. "So do I." Neither of us spoke after that. We didn't need to. The truth was already there, waiting. Months passed. Sarah eventually found stable employment. She saved money. She regained her confidence. She rebuilt her life piece by piece. And yet she stayed. Not because she had nowhere else to go, but because neither of us wanted her to leave. One night, Emma came over for dinner. She watched us interact for a while before smiling. "What?" Sarah asked. Emma laughed. "You two look happier now than you did 10 years ago." Neither of us knew how to respond because deep down we knew she was right. Pain had changed us. Loss had humbled us. Time had taught us lessons we should have learned years earlier. We no longer took each other for granted. We no longer assumed tomorrow was guaranteed. We appreciated every conversation, every laugh, every quiet moment. 1 year after Sarah arrived during that storm, we stood together on the same porch where she had once knocked on my door. Rain fell softly in the distance. Nothing like the violent storm that had brought her back into my life. She looked at me and smiled. The same smile that had made me fall in love decades earlier. "I almost didn't come that night," she said. I squeezed her hand. "I'm glad you did. So am I." Life doesn't always give people second chances. Sometimes doors close forever. Sometimes goodbyes remain permanent. But every once in a while, when you least expect it, life surprises you. A storm arrives. A knock echoes through the darkness. And standing on the other side of the door is someone you thought you'd lost forever. Sarah came to my house because she had nowhere else to go. What neither of us realized was that I had been lost too, for years. And somehow, in finding shelter that stormy night, we both found our way home. The rain had brought her back, but love, forgiveness, and understanding were what made her stay. And that became the beginning of the most beautiful chapter of our story.